always, that's one of my going to be one of the biggest mysteries in my life, because he was trying to tell me something.
After nearly 30 years, buried evidence began to surface, and it suggested the truth about Tupac was never lost. It was hidden. Hidden by people who benefited, protected by silence, and erased by fear. Las Vegas, September 7, 1996. The Strip was electric. Lights, noise, crowds pouring in for the Mike Tyson fight. Among them was Tupac Shakur, 25 years old, confident, energized after watching Tyson end the fight in the first round. He laughed, joked, moved like nothing could touch him. Hours later, everything collapsed. At 11:15 p.m., a white Cadillac pulled up beside the black BMW Tupac was riding in. At the intersection of Flamingo Road and Koval Lane, gunfire exploded. 13 shots, 4 hit Tupac. The BMW swerved, then stopped. Blood soaked the seats. People ran. Others froze, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Tupac was rushed to University Medical Center. Doctors fought through the night. A lung was punctured. Internal damage was severe.
Star Tupac Shakur died last night after a brief life in a rough business. He was 25.
For 6 days, the world waited. Fans gathered outside the hospital. Radio stations broke down. His mother, Afeni Shakur, never left his side. On September 13th at 4:03 p.m., Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. The official explanation was brief and unsatisfying. A gang-related drive-by shooting, case unsolved. But the details never lined up. Dozens of witnesses were present, yet stories shifted or disappeared entirely. The white Cadillac was never found. No arrests, no public suspects. Surveillance cameras in the area had no usable footage. Key evidence went missing. Reports were incomplete. The investigation drifted, then stalled. Fear filled the gaps where answers should have been. People knew things, but silence was survival. Years turned into decades. The case sat untouched, a cold file buried under bureaucracy. Tupac became a legend, but the truth behind his death remained sealed. Until 2025.
Give me all you got, give me your money, and I'll put your stuff out. I mean, I knew some of the people who they call themselves legends in the music business who've been the biggest disappointments in the world.
While reviewing unrelated cold cases, a forensic team reopened Tupac's file and found something no one had ever processed, a sealed piece of evidence overlooked for nearly 3 decades. One detail never tested, never logged, and powerful enough to reopen everything. The night that never ended refused to fade. After September 13th, 1996, the world tried to move on. But Tupac didn't disappear. His music dominated the airwaves. Posthumous albums sold millions. Murals of his face spread across cities worldwide. In death, he became larger than he ever was alive. Yet beneath the tributes lingered one question no one could answer. Who killed Tupac Shakur? And why was the truth buried? From the start, the official explanation felt thin. Police labeled the shooting a gang-related drive-by, allegedly tied to a fight earlier that night at the MGM Grand. Surveillance footage showed Tupac and his crew confronting Orlando Anderson inside the casino. Investigators claimed Anderson later retaliated with help from Southside Crips members. On paper, it sounded simple. On the street, it didn't. Anderson was questioned multiple times but never charged. He denied involvement. 2 years later, he was killed in an unrelated shooting in Compton. Other figures loosely connected to that night also died violently in the years that followed. Authorities called it coincidence. Others saw a pattern. The witnesses only deepened the mystery. More than 20 cars were stopped at the intersection when the shots rang out. Dozens of people saw something, yet when police arrived, memories vanished.
1 year, and I'm a convict, and my homeboy just got off a murder case. So that tell you that it's pure talent, no hype. We don't got no all-American smiles. They don't even want to buy our record, but they gotta buy our record because we represent the street. So Death Row East is gonna be a personification of what we did on the West Side. We're gonna do it to the East Side, and we're gonna prove once and for all that all these people talking about an East Coast, West Coast war, they like the Judas was to Jesus. They only here to cause confusion. We here to bring money and to bring change. They here to cause confusion. All these weak rappers, Nas, all these suckers, they battling off of East and West like this is a game. This ain't no game. If this was chess, we'd be yelling checkmate 3 years ago, because we've been beat these. It's not a game. We out here trying to help our people make money. We trying to get out of this 3-strike circle they got us in and start getting our papers on. So that's what we doing. By strength in numbers, we coming to the East Coast to prove there is no fear, there is no problem, there ain't nothing but opportunity. And the opportunity is overthrow the government y'all got right now, which is Bad Boy and Nas and all that bullshit, and we will bring a new government here that will feed every person in.
Some claimed they were looking away. Others suddenly couldn't describe the white Cadillac. Several witnesses changed their stories entirely. Fear ruled that world. Talking meant danger. The code of silence wasn't symbolic, it was enforced. Families were threatened, property vandalized. Those who cooperated became targets. The message was clear: stay quiet or be next. Even potential allies chose survival over justice. Critical evidence slipped away. The BMW Tupac rode in was impounded but never thoroughly examined. No proper residue testing, no full trajectory analysis. By the time deeper questions were asked, the car had been released and cleaned. Surveillance footage from nearby casinos was never recovered. Shell casings disappeared from evidence. First responder reports contradicted each other and were never reconciled. Even basic facts shifted: the exact time of the shooting, the route taken, the number of shots fired. Chaos explained the confusion that night, but 30 years should have been enough to separate panic from truth. And yet, it never happened. What made the silence even more disturbing was that Tupac himself seemed to sense it coming. In interviews months before his death, his tone shifted. He spoke about enemies closing in. His lyrics grew darker, filled with paranoia, betrayal, and distrust. Friends later said he believed he was being watched, targeted, hunted. He changed hotels often, increased security. Yet when asked who exactly posed the threat, he stayed vague, either unsure or unwilling to say the names out loud. For years, insiders whispered theories. Some claimed corrupt officers were involved. Others pointed to powerful figures in the music industry, rival gangs, old scores, but none of it went anywhere. No one would testify. Grand juries produced nothing. Private investigators hired by Tupac's family hit the same walls. The case went cold. Files were boxed up. Detectives retired. The public assumed the truth would never surface. Then, in early 2025, everything shifted. An audio recording leaked online, a phone call recorded just days after the shooting. Two men discussed the attack in detail. Names were mentioned. The plan was described. There was laughter, no remorse. The recording contradicted nearly every official statement ever released. Authorities could no longer ignore it. Las Vegas police quietly reopened the case, forming a new task force built around cold case forensics. This time, investigators had what didn't exist in 1996: advanced technology capable of extracting truth from evidence once dismissed as useless. Video enhancement became the first breakthrough.
I'm a Gemini. Me being a Gemini, I am the classic case of a Gemini. You know what I mean?
No, what does that mean?
It means that I'm quiet, I could be calm, quiet, and very into my work, and totally focused and totally disciplined, and boring. You know what I mean? Or I could be fun, but dangerous. Not only to other people, but to myself. Because I'm like a kid in a candy store. All of this is new. I'm 25, you know what I mean? And it's like, got cash, everything you dreamed of, and they've held me back in so many other circumstances that now it's your time to go, and it's kind of hard, difficult to keep yourself from just pressing the gas down all the way. Basically just taking my time and thinking and analyzing situations and trying to think before I do things. I'm very passionate. Geminis, you know, me and Prince, we Gemini, we passionate.
I like that. And how do you deal with the pressures?
You see it on the news all the time, how I deal with it. I deal with it like I think any human being would deal with it. Is like, people can tell you, you know, don't do this or don't do that, but my whole mind state is that if we don't ever go outside of the boundaries, we will never change anything, we will never begin anything, we will never start anything. We'll just keep talking about the people who did it once and told us not to go outside the thing. That's just like them telling Christopher Columbus that the world is flat. You know what I mean? I'm doing the same thing. They're telling me you can't do this. You can only rap. And if you rap, you can only rap about this. And then you can't act. And if you act, you can only do the black films. And you know, you can't be you can't be an artist or a celebrity and go out still. And you can't be an artist and still have fun and still be true. I don't like that. So I try to go outside the boundaries. Sometimes it's effective and it's positive. Sometimes it's negative and it blows up in my face.
Footage long believed too grainy to matter was reprocessed frame by frame. Cameras from nearby casinos revealed the white Cadillac moving through Las Vegas that night, following a deliberate route, not random, not panicked. It looked planned. Then investigators revisited the MGM Grand footage. The fight between Tupac's group and Orlando Anderson was slowed down, dissected from every angle. In the background stood a man no one had noticed before, not part of either group. He watched silently. When security intervened, he made a phone call and vanished into the crowd. That detail changed everything. Audio experts analyzed the leaked recording using voice recognition tools. The discussion clearly referenced the shooting, but background noise revealed something more troubling: police radio chatter. The call appeared to take place near active law enforcement operations, possibly inside a police facility. The implications were chilling. Ballistics experts then rebuilt the shooting digitally. Using modern trajectory analysis, they mapped bullet paths inside the BMW. The results didn't match the original narrative. At least 3 bullets came from a different angle entirely. That meant one of 2 things. There was a second shooter, or the entire story was wrong. Crime scene photos were re-examined. Investigators noticed tire marks suggesting another vehicle had been present. Cigarette butts collected that night, never tested, were flagged for DNA analysis. After nearly 30 years, the silence was finally cracking. As investigators dug deeper, the picture grew darker. A forgotten gas station receipt surfaced, time-stamped minutes before the shooting. It linked a purchase to one of the long-rumored suspects, yet it had never been followed up. Even more damaging were police reports from that night that never made it into the official case file. Several officers documented witness claims of a second dark-colored car fleeing the scene. Others reported a man on foot acting suspiciously near the intersection before shots were fired. Some witnesses even mentioned hearing heated arguing nearby shortly before 11 p.m. None of it was investigated. Those details sat in boxes for decades, ignored or deliberately buried. When experts overlaid the evidence, a pattern emerged. The unidentified man from the MGM Grand footage appeared repeatedly that night. Enhanced images placed him at the same gas station where the white Cadillac had stopped earlier. Another camera caught him near the intersection, roughly 30 minutes before the shooting. Phone records, subpoenaed years ago but never fully analyzed, showed repeated calls between his number and multiple people at locations Tupac visited that evening. That's when investigators asked the question no one had seriously considered before. What if Tupac wasn't the intended target? What if the attack was meant to kill someone else in the BMW, or to look like something it wasn't? A misdirection, a setup, a betrayal from inside. The name tied to those erased reports belonged to someone Tupac trusted. That realization hit hard. This wasn't about rival gangs or distant enemies. The evidence pointed inward, to people close enough to smile in his face while plotting behind his back. And the motive was simple: money. By 1996, Tupac was a financial powerhouse. Albums sold millions, films boosted his profile. Death Row Records was printing cash off his work. But success created tension. Tupac was becoming too powerful, too independent, too vocal about controlling his future. He talked openly about leaving the label, starting his own company, owning his masters. That kind of freedom threatened people who relied on keeping him locked into contracts. His relationship with the label's leadership was complicated. He had been helped, but that help came with expectations, loyalty, output, obedience. As months passed, gratitude turned into frustration. Tupac felt trapped. Financial records later revealed the imbalance. He generated massive revenue but saw only a fraction of it. Contracts favored executives, not artists. Tupac began asking questions. He hired lawyers. He prepared to renegotiate or walk away. That made him dangerous. Behind closed doors, conversations happened without him. Investors worried about losses. If Tupac left, the label's value could collapse. To some, he stopped being an asset and became a liability. And in those discussions, the language was cold and clinical, as if they were talking about numbers, not a human life. Street politics and corporate greed collided in dangerous ways. Death Row Records was deeply tied to gang culture, particularly groups linked to the Bloods. Suge Knight allegedly used those connections to intimidate rivals and enforce business interests. Tupac himself was not a gang member, but his association with the label placed him in the middle of violent power struggles he never fully controlled. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry was real, but it was also profitable. Record sales surged as tensions escalated. Some people benefited from keeping that conflict alive, even as it put Tupac at risk. What investigators uncovered decades later raised disturbing questions. Financial records reportedly showed that just weeks before Tupac's death, multi-million-dollar life insurance policies were taken out on him, naming Death Row Records as the beneficiary. While such policies were not unheard of, the timing stood out. If Tupac died, the label would immediately receive a massive cash infusion at a time when insiders claimed finances were strained. Phone records, subpoenaed years earlier but never fully analyzed, revealed more. In the days leading up to September 7th, calls occurred between people in Tupac's inner circle and individuals connected to rival gangs. Some of those calls happened only hours before the shooting. The conversations were never recorded, but the patterns suggested coordination. Someone appeared to be sharing Tupac's movements. Security decisions that night only deepened suspicion. Tupac's usual bodyguards were reportedly told to stay behind. The trip was described to him as low-key and safe. In reality, Las Vegas was anything but safe for someone of his profile. Years later, former associates began speaking, cautiously. One admitted he was instructed to take a specific route that night, ensuring the BMW passed certain intersections at predictable times. Another claimed he was asked to keep Tupac distracted so he wouldn't notice being watched. These were not enemies. They were people close to him. The most unsettling revelation came from a confidential federal document declassified in 2024. It suggested that Tupac had been under long-term surveillance as an influential cultural figure. According to the file, authorities were aware he faced credible threats. Meetings between industry figures and known criminals were documented. Discussions involving potential violence were reportedly recorded. No warning was ever given. When investigators finally assembled all available evidence in 2025, a grim picture emerged. Tupac Shakur was likely not killed in a random act of street violence or spontaneous revenge. His death appears to have been the result of multiple forces converging: financial interests seeking control, alleged corruption that discouraged intervention, and street-level actors willing to carry out violence. The MGM grand fight was not the cause, it was the cover. Evidence suggested the white Cadillac was not searching for Tupac that night. It was waiting. Enhanced footage showed it positioned at the intersection, engine running, lights off. Phone records indicated coordination. Tupac's route was known in advance. The night of September 7th, 1996, was not chaos. It was execution. When the BMW appeared, the attack was fast and deliberate. 13 shots in seconds. Then the Cadillac vanished into streets where cameras weren't working and patrols were mysteriously absent. What followed looked less like failure and more like restraint. Officers responding that night were reportedly instructed to slow the investigation. Witnesses who came forward were discouraged. Evidence was mishandled or lost. Detectives who pushed too hard were reassigned. Years later, retired officers admitted they felt pressure to accept the gang violence narrative and move on. Those who resisted paid a price. Why protect a lie so carefully? Because the truth threatened entire systems. The 1990s music industry was built on exploitation. Labels profited while artists stayed indebted. Controversy sold records. Violence fueled narratives. If it emerged that Tupac was allegedly betrayed by people he trusted and treated as a commodity instead of a human, lawsuits would follow, careers would collapse, fortunes would vanish. Federal agencies also had reasons to stay silent. Admitting they monitored Tupac while failing to intervene would expose illegal surveillance and racial targeting. It was easier to let the case die as unsolved gang violence than reveal how deeply institutions had failed him. For nearly 30 years, silence held. People died. Secrets disappeared. Others were paid to forget. Those who spoke were discredited. Tupac's mother, Afeni Shakur, fought for answers until her death in 2016, without ever hearing the truth. The system that should have protected her son protected his killers instead. The consequences reshaped culture. hip-hop lost its most fearless voice. Artists learned a lesson. Challenge power, and you risk everything. Trust between artists and labels eroded. The East Coast-West Coast divide deepened, leading to more violence. Music grew safer, less political, more cautious. The message had been delivered. What makes it unbearable is how preventable it all was. If intelligence had been acted on, Tupac could have been warned. If business interests had valued him as a person, he wouldn't have been exposed. If police had investigated honestly, the truth wouldn't have vanished. Every system that should have protected him chose not to. When the full findings were released in late 2025, the world finally listened. News networks halted programming. Social media exploded. For many, the confirmation didn't bring peace. It brought rage and grief. Knowing the truth didn't heal the wound. It deepened it. Outside the Las Vegas courthouse, fans gathered. Candles burned. Tupac's music played. Strangers embraced, across race, age, and background. This wasn't just about solving a famous death. It was about proving that for 30 years, people weren't crazy. They were right. Tupac's family received the news with conflicting emotions. His sister, Sekiwa Set Shakur, spoke publicly about feeling both relief and devastation. Relief that the truth was no longer buried, and devastation that her brother had been betrayed by people he trusted. She shared how their mother, Afeni Shakur, passed away without ever knowing what truly happened, and how that unanswered pain followed her to the end. Now there were answers, but little accountability. Most of the people the family wanted held responsible were either deceased or beyond legal reach. Statutes of limitations closed doors. The music industry responded with careful silence. Major labels issued vague statements of sympathy without admitting wrongdoing. Behind the scenes, lawyers assessed risk. Former death row figures avoided public view. A few retired insiders, speaking anonymously, admitted that exploitation and dangerous business practices were common in the 1990s, while insisting the industry had changed. Artists and activists disagreed. They pointed out that young musicians still signed predatory contracts, still face pressure to fuel conflict, and still struggle to own their work. Legal proceedings moved slowly. Some suspects invoked their Fifth Amendment rights. Others were already gone. Proving who fired the shots was easier than proving who gave the orders. Justice, even with the truth exposed, remained incomplete. What resonated most was what the world lost. Tupac was not just a rapper. He was a poet, actor, activist, and philosopher who gave voice to people society ignored. He spoke about poverty, police brutality, racism, and survival with a raw honesty that made millions feel seen. He challenged both street violence and institutional power. At just 25, he was still evolving. Imagine what another 30 years could have brought. After his death, hip-hop changed. Political edge softened. Labels pushed safer, more commercial sounds. Artists learned a lesson. Being too outspoken, too independent could be dangerous. Some kept speaking anyway. Many chose silence. The culture lost part of its fearlessness. After the findings were released, books, documentaries, and films followed. Some focused on the investigation. Others questioned power itself. Who decides which voices are protected and which are erased? Tupac's music surged again. New generations discovered his work and finally understood why he mattered. The truth didn't diminish his legacy, it deepened it. If this story made you think, take a moment to like the video. It helps more people see it. Subscribe for more stories that were buried, not forgotten. And let us know in the comments, do you believe the full truth has finally come out? Thanks for watching.